Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast and others of you are joining us on our digital platforms. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. Tonight, human lives, political ponds, migrants in Massachusetts. They arrived unannounced on the small island of Martha's Vineyard. Nearly 50 migrants seeking asylum at the southern Texas border lured onto planes headed for the island with promises of food and jobs. Many called it a political stunt set up by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as part of his anti-immigration campaign. It was a throwback to the 1960s when segregationists put African Americans on a bus headed north with false promises of jobs and housing. Whatever the intent, the migrants on Martha's Vineyard were warmly greeted, fed, and temporarily housed by the working class community of residents who live on the island year-round. Now a class action suit has been filed on their behalf, and the issue of immigration is once again front and center. What's next for the migrants caught in the middle? Joining us, Sarah Betancourt, reporter, GBH News, Center for Investigative Reporting. Mirian Albert, civil rights attorney for Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston, and Sarang Sakavat, political director for the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition, MIRA. Welcome to you all. So I want to start this way. There were 48 who arrived on Martha's Vineyard, some of them as young as 2 years old. 2 of them have since left. Each of you have either indirectly or directly communicated with some of them. And I'd like to start off with you sharing the stories that they told you about their journey to get here. I mean, on the road, just even before they got on the planes. So Mirian, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, you know, Lawyers for Civil Rights has been on the ground since the news broke out. I was personally in Martha's Vineyard on Thursday when the migrants arrived, and you know, the stories that our clients have shared have been harrowing. We're talking about children and mothers who walk through the jungle, right? We're talking about individuals who experienced violence as they were crossing different countries to reach the United States, including individuals who were kidnapped by the cartel and gangs in Mexico and other parts, individuals who had their teeth pulled out with pliers, who were tortured, just a range of harrowing experiences. And really what our clients were seeking was safety, not to be part of a political stunt.
Okay. Sarah, what were you told?
So I interviewed a gentleman named Pedro Pablo, who talked about his journey to Martha's Vineyard. He had initially come from Venezuela. He was an engineering student and ended up fleeing and leaving university to come north. He ended up in Texas, was claiming asylum, and was lured onto these planes with the promise of going to either Chicago, Missouri, or New York, he had mentioned. And he was really shocked and really upset when he found out I'm on this island off of Cape Cod that I've never heard of. And what he told me was like, well, I just want to come here. I want to go to Utah and work as a welder again and send money home to my children. That's all I want. I don't know why I'm here.
What did you hear, Sarang?
So I'm probably the only one here who hasn't actually had the chance to speak to folks directly, but basically we've been hearing exactly just this story is repeated 48 times, essentially. That, you know, they're bringing up individual stories, but every one of these folks has gone through something similar to this. They're all came to the U.S. because they're victims, because they're seeking some kind of refuge. And just being victimized again by this whole thing, being taken, like Sarah was mentioning, they didn't know where they were going. They were promised X, Y, and Z, not delivered. My understanding is that they were taken to the airport, left at the airport, and had to walk to the nearest help on the island. And, they don't know where that help is. They're completely new.
Now, you said that this was cruel and intentionally cruel. Explain that.
So a lot of what we've been seeing from anti-immigrant forces really has been sort of cruelty being the point, using cruelty for two purposes, I really think. One is to try and dissuade people from coming here and saying, well, if you come here, you're just going to be re-victimized. But the other thing I think is it really kind of builds up, frankly, the anti-immigrant base to see this kind of cruelty and to see people being dehumanized.
Mm-hmm. Miriam, you talked about vulnerable communities being at risk for this kind of what some people are calling a stunt. Would you talk a little bit more about that?
Right. I mean, just to also just add to that last point, I think that, you know, like, it's such a cruel experience that, you know, these individuals have traveled so long, and then, you know, once they were here, once again, they were, you know, used as political pawns. And, you know, obviously as immigrants, our clients had no money, they had no shelter, they really had no belongings, right? They were in such a vulnerable state when they first encountered, you know, the woman that they described as Perla. You know, this is again like preying on their like bare necessities, right? Like offering them a gift card for McDonald's for $5, right? Like, because why? Because they know that that's like their bare necessity, right? Like offering them shoes because they know that they've been walking for so long through, you know, so many countries to reach this point and have nothing, right? Like they're so destitute at that point, right? So again, like preying on their vulnerabilities.
Sarah, answer a question that many people may be asking. Who paid for this?
I mean, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis claimed credit for doing this. Back in the beginning of the summer, his state budget was approved to include $12 million to rehome migrants. And so he had individuals go to Texas and try to find people in border towns, specifically San Antonio, which is a little further north, but to go to the bus shelter, to go to some of these homeless shelters and say, hey, where are you going? And if they expressed any interest in going to Florida, he alleges, then he wanted to rehome them and get them away from potentially going to Florida.
And that's how this person named Perla came into play. So this person has been identified and was the asker of these people on the ground.
Yeah, she hired another individual as well to do that, who's since spoken to the New York Times and CNN, I believe. And he did not know, allegedly did not know they were going to end up in Martha's Vineyard. He was just told by Perla, oh, they're going to end up in a place where they can really be helped.
So one other thing I want you to bring up, you had been reporting about buses from Texas Governor Abbott going to New York City, and then hearing rumors that some migrants might end up in Massachusetts before the Martha's Vineyard incident happened.
Yeah, so the Texas to New York City, Chicago, and DC buses have been happening for 4 or 5 months now, and 9,000 people have been bused north. And there's been some overflow into Massachusetts, people coming of their own volition because there's very little shelter in New York City, to Massachusetts, to Boston hospitals seeking help. And Boston Children's Hospital and Mass General Hospital, and I believe BMC as well, had all mentioned to me, like, yeah, we can confirm this. And we've had people show up who need social services, not so much medical needs, and we've referred them to the Department of Transitional Assistance. Now, we reported that 3 hours before the flight came in, which was unprecedented.
Now, Sarang, I want to get something clear, because when people hear about these migrants coming, the word that's used is they've entered into the country illegally. However, if you're seeking asylum, there's a kind of gray area here, because seeking asylum is a process that anyone can enter into. Now, you don't have to be given it. Let's be clear. Everybody who asks doesn't get it. So let's put that on the table. But as you are asking for it, you're something else in terms of your status. Just want to have you explain that.
Yeah, so these are people who, and give you an idea of how kind of ridiculous immigration law is, they're lawfully present, but they don't have legal status.
Okay.
But basically what that means is, they've gone through the process that they're supposed to go through. They've presented themselves to the Department of Homeland Security, and they've said, hey, we're here, we need help, we want to apply for asylum. So, these folks all came in when they arrived at Martha's Vineyard. Some of them they all had check-ins with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Some of them had those check-ins within the next week. So they had been going through this process. ICE knows who they are. They know, well, now that Florida moved them, they don't know where they are necessarily. That causes some problems for the federal government. But these are certainly all people who've been doing things the way they're supposed to be doing it.
All right, so now let's talk about this lawsuit, Miriam. What are you all alleging?
Sure.
And you should say that your organization brought the lawsuit.
Sure. So Lawyers for Civil Rights has filed a civil lawsuit in federal court. It's a class action. So the class action will encompass the 50 migrants from Martha's Vineyard incident, but it will also allow other individuals who are similarly situated in that they also are immigrants who traveled across state lines by fraudulent inducement at the hands of Governor DeSantis or the state of Florida. So, we hope that one of the goals of this lawsuit is to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So that is one way to accomplish it. And we also just want to make sure that our clients are made whole at the end of this, that they receive the respect and the dignity that they deserve through this whole ordeal. So we are alleging there's various constitutional claims that are alleged and also some state claims, including fraud, false imprisonment, some constitutional claims including equal protection, due process violations, the interference with immigration law. Again, like the state of Florida should not have the ability to interfere with federal immigration law in the way that it has done with our clients.
So I've also heard potential kidnapping and sex trafficking. Is that part of your lawsuit?
That is not a part of our lawsuit. Our focus, like I said, is predominantly on those constitutional claims and those state law claims.
So what happens if it's your lawsuit, you win? Now, what then happens?
Right, so as I mentioned, it's making our clients whole again, right? Making them feel whole again and ensuring that this does not happen again. And that, every state across the U.S. understands, especially Republican governors know that they can't interfere with federal immigration law, right? And that you can't treat human beings just because they're vulnerable or immigrants, that you can't treat them like political pawns.
Okay, to all of you, these are migrants of color. What role has race played or is playing, even if it hasn't been outrightly expressed, in these kinds of incidents, both with the buses and definitely landing these people on Martha's Vineyard unannounced? I'll start with you, Sarang.
It's a really big question, frankly, and I think the best way for me to answer it is to say that I don't even have to look at this specific group of migrants. I think you just look at immigration in general and how it's constantly been used as, among other things, been used as racial policy in this country. Look at, for example, the disparate way that we treat Haitians often in this country, who are, again, similarly situated. A lot of these folks we're talking about who are coming up from New York, for example, are Haitians, and they're not getting the same kind of support that we're seeing from this Venezuelan population right now.
We've not heard about that in a large extent.
Because they're not coming up in one big group. They're coming up kind of piecemeal. It doesn't really get on anyone's radar. Look at the difference in the way we say, oh, we're going to welcome Ukrainian refugees, but we don't want Syrian or Haitian refugees, for example. Immigration has always been a piece of this nation's sort of racial identity and racial policies.
Sarah?
And it's, speaking to what Sarang just said, it really is embedded in the immigration system. If you look at the Boston asylum approval ratings here, first of all, the approval ratings are lower than almost any other asylum office in the country, save New York.
Wow.
But second, if you look at the racial demographics of who is approved, anyone who is black or brown much lower approval rating than an immigrant who is white. And it also harkens back to, all of this harkens back to the reverse freedom rides of 1962, when you have white segregationalist governors responding to the freedom riders and saying, we are going to bus black Americans north and mislead them in doing that.
And just a little bit of history for people who don't know the Freedom Riders. So these were young and old people, but mostly young people who elected to get on buses to test the segregationist laws of transportation because the Supreme Court had ruled that separate but equal was not equal. And so that this wasn't supposed to be happening in laws, but it happened. So they're going south to make sure that the laws are followed. And segregationists responded by saying, oh, we'll show you. We'll send black people north and see how you like it, kind of thing, just so people who are not familiar with the history understand that. Hence, we call it the reverse freedom rides. Okay, so Mirian, race as a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what has been said. It's a very complicated question, right? And immigration, you know, immigrants of color have always been used as scapegoats, I think, historically, to deal with whatever, you know, to perpetuate white supremacy in essence, right? And that continues to be true to this day. And we see that with what immigrants of color get help, or what immigrants generally, right, are able to get assistance.
What is one thing that you think has not been brought out or highlighted that ought to be as we look at the Martha's Vineyard situation and understand it's a microcosm of what's happening across the country? I'll start with you, Sarang.
I mean, there's a lot of things, frankly. One thing that really a lot of folks have brought up to me, and something that I think is really important, is immigration isn't just a reflection of our own domestic policies, it's also a reflection of our foreign policies. And a lot of the factors that push people out of their own home countries, we have a lot of responsibility for. I'm not going to say total responsibility, certainly, but you know, there's a history in a lot of these countries of our interference that has really caused long-term destabilization and really almost promotes corruption as the way to get things done. And this is exactly what's pushing people out. This is exactly what causes the violence and the poverty that people are seeking to escape from.
Sarah?
Based off of that, also, like, a lot of Central American, South American governments have been deeply influenced by the U.S. government in the past 100 years. And a lot of that has caused poverty that is recurring and hasn't been fixed, or there hasn't really been much of a proposal to fix it. I know Biden last year had the vice president go down to Mexico and to Central America and to see what the roots of migration are. And it's like, well, look to D.C. first. But also just speaking to what hasn't really been looked at. I mean, I like to think logistically and to look at our state government, to look at the Baker administration. Like, there were people, families ending up here from the New York City buses. And I'd like to know, like, what's going on with those families as well. There's hundreds of families up here. Like, I've been talking to a lot of sources. What's being done to help them as well? Because the state knows about this. They're just not talking to media about it.
Okay. Miriam?
You know, going off of that point, I'd like to add that, you know, for our specific clients, right, they received such a warm welcome, both from the legal community and from the Martha's Vineyard community when this all occurred. And I hope that, you know, at least speaking in regards to the legal community, that they're able to expand that pro bono support that they provided our clients also to migrants who are arriving on buses, because it is something that's, you know, not fully addressed, right? And I think that there is the will to do it, and we should encourage others who have the capacity to do that to do so.
I just want to emphasize that the people on Martha's Vineyard that greeted the migrants warmly are not. DeSantis thought he was making an attack on rich people.
That's very important.
The rich people are gone for the season. Hello, their houses are closed down, the big houses that everybody sees. There's a whole population of people who are very working class and or poor who live there year round. And these are the people that greeted them. They have one shelter on that island. So folks need to know that they were so all off about who they thought they were hurting, in fact. Now, I want to follow up with you about the lawsuit because you are hoping, or the lawyers group that you are hoping that other jurisdictions will pick up from what you're doing and also file a lawsuit.
Yes, correct. Lawyers for Civil Rights is open to providing technical support to organizations, legal organizations across the country who also want to follow suit in case this is something that's also occurring in their jurisdictions, and we're more than willing to provide that technical support.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sarang, you've said, I think rightly, that this is cyclical, and what happens is, at least the public debate about immigration is cyclical. So it comes around, and when something happens, we have an incident, and now, everybody talks about it, but nothing gets done. So since this has been described as a political stunt by many, what do you think is its impact politically now? We're weeks before the midterm. That clearly seems to be what the connection or the drive was to have this happen now. Mm-hmm. How do you see it impacting?
I'll be honest, it's hard to tell. Frankly, I don't think polls are generally that reliable. One thing I would say is, though, is that I think it's even more, it's not just about the midterms. I think it's about 2024 as well, because DeSantis certainly has his eye on running for president in 2024. And I think, the reason to do something like this is it is a big national splash. And it really gets that support from a lot of those anti-immigrant forces.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, your take?
I mean, piggybacking off of what Sarang just said, Governor Abbott, his office claimed they didn't know that DeSantis was doing this, but it's fantastic that he did it. They were using it as a rallying point. And in the press release and press statements he sent to reporters, he was saying, if you're a border governor dealing with migration, you should do the same thing.
So no question it was political.
Absolutely, it was political. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens next, given that the Florida governor has even more money to do this forced relocation.
How does he spend that money now that Florida is devastated by Ian?
I have no idea. I mean, the budget was $12 million. He spent about $634,000, I think the Tribune or New York Times reported. And that means he has $11.4 million left. It's designated for the Department of Transportation of Florida to spend on relocation, but governor's the governor. He can designate where that money goes.
Okay. All right, Miriam, so political?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. And, that is, again, one of the goals of our lawsuit, right? Lawyers for Civil Rights wants to make clear that, human beings should not be treated as political pawns, and that, that's with all the responsible parties are going to be held accountable, and we're ready to do that. And I'm sure that there's going to be other people who are also willing to join that fight.
So personal reflections, just real quick from each of you about this. And I'm actually going to start with you, Sarah, because you mentioned that you immigrated in 2006. So you had a kind of visceral response to, listening to the stories of some of the people.
Actually, one of the attorneys I interviewed immigrated from Venezuela in 2006. His name's Julio, and he's working with an attorney named Rachel Self to get a group of 5 individuals asylum or U visas as well. It's victims of a crime or witnesses of a crime visa. And
he felt some kind of way about it.
And he felt very strongly about this. He was like, yeah, this is happening to my people, and it's not okay, and this can't keep happening to more people. So it was really interesting to hear that perspective from him. As an immigration reporter, I'd never seen anything like it.
Miriam?
I thought it was heartbreaking, right? I mean, listening to my clients talk about how some of them broke down in tears when they arrived at Martha's Vineyard, when they saw that they were abandoned and had nowhere to go, mothers who had their children with them. The desperation that they described was heartbreaking, and I don't think any person should ever have to feel that way.
You're fighting for $20 million in supplemental budget money to try to address some of these issues. Put that together with, the vulnerability of the people that you've heard from here.
So one of the big challenges that a lot of folks have is we just don't know when you get these calls, when folks show up at the hospital, for example, they don't know where to refer them to. Those services, there's no sort of central place that can keep track of who's coming in, what services are available where. So that 20 million, we're really hoping will kind of go towards creating more of a system on the state side to be able to handle these kind of issues.
Okay, well, we have to leave it there. I really appreciate all of you engaging in this really powerful discussion. Something tells me we'll be back at this table having this discussion again, because I don't think it's the last we've heard of this. Thank you. That's the end of our broadcast, the end of the show. Thank you for joining us. And now stay with us as we continue our conversation on digital platforms, Facebook and YouTube.
These were children, they were moms, they were fleeing communism. And what did Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott do to them? They used them as political pawns, treated them like chattel in a cruel, premeditated political stunt.
That was White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre discussing the treatment of the migrants who were transported on buses and planes to states around the country, including Massachusetts. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. We are on Facebook and YouTube with our post show, continuing our discussion on migrants in Massachusetts. And we're talking about migrants as human pawns. We talked a little bit in the broadcast show about the political aspect of it, so I'm going to ask you the impossible question. How far are we from a comprehensive immigration plan? And did this, or are these incidents actually pushing us a little closer because there's more conversation? Now, one of the Massachusetts delegation, Senator Ed Markey, said, if we could I've been begging for 9 years to get my folks across the aisle, the Republicans, to join me in having discussions about it, and it hasn't happened, and that's why we're seeing this kind of stuff pop up. Sarang, this is where you live, this kind of advocacy. What's your read?
I've been doing this kind of advocacy for over 15 years now, and I actually think incidents like this, kind of pull the two sides farther apart even. Wow. Immigration is really an animating force for the right wing, and a lot of times, the reason you see things like this, political stunts like this, is exactly because it gets them more support in primaries. And so I think as you see these kind of things continue to happen, you're going to see politicians, some taking a much stronger pro-immigrant stand, but a lot taking a much stronger anti-immigrant stand.
So how do you, as an advocate, I'm going to ask the two of you the same question, how do you respond to people that say, listen, I'm not really anti-immigrant. My people came here, we all settle. But how are we supposed to take everybody in from the world? We have to have some limits. We have to make some decisions. And the way they are coming in is not right. And some of our communities, if I'm living in San Antonio, for example, are just being besieged. Mm-hmm.
Well, no one's arguing for open borders, first off. No one who's in sort of the mainstream is arguing for open borders. I think a big part of the problem we see is a lot of just misinformation. Let's take the fact that Trump comes down and the first thing he says talks about rapists and drug dealers from Mexico. They're setting the narrative, this very negative narrative of what immigration is to the U.S. And frankly, this isn't a new narrative for us. We've been having these kind of arguments about, it was Irish immigrants in the 50s, Jewish refugees in the late 30s and
Chinese
the 40s.
Exclusion Act.
The Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1880s, absolutely. We go through this, you and I were talking about it being cyclical. It's cyclical on a decades-long scale as well as being cyclical in terms of, something happening every couple of weeks.
All right, so what's your assessment, as a reporter, having covered this for a long time, about how far we are from just beginning the conversations about comprehensive immigration plan?
I don't think people have ever been further apart on immigration policy than now. I mean, if you look back to the early 2000s, the initial DREAM Act, which was to get DACA recipients, back then there wasn't DACA, but dreamers and young people brought to the country without papers, a pathway to citizenship, that was a bipartisan effort. Now, if you talk about the DREAM Act, it's like a very democratic, very liberal idea.
And Sarah, by the way, it wasn't just bipartisan, it was led by Republicans, to be clear.
Right. And so things are very different now. I mean, as a reporter, I think Trump definitely polarized immigration discussion. But if you look at family detention centers and people coming to the country and asking for asylum and being put in detention centers, that's something that's been going on since the end of the Bush administration. Obama, who a lot of immigration advocates consider to be the deporter-in-chief, really heightened that. But the Obama administration didn't talk a lot about immigration other than when he passed the executive order for DACA. But Trump took the football and ran with it and made this a political, public conversation. And like Sarang said, the narrative has been very polarized, and people seem to forget the stories of how people ended up generations past in the U.S.
And let's, while we're talking about DACA, the news about DACA is that it just got knocked down, essentially. So if you're already in the program, they won't kick you out of the country, but there will be no new people added to the group. So essentially that's over, right? Is DACA over?
Well, DACA's been in the same place actually for a couple of years.
Okay.
Since the Trump administration tried to rescind the program to begin with. There are prior court decisions that stopped new applications. The truth is, though, that the issue with DACA is that, one, to be eligible for it, you had to already have been here since 2007.
That's right.
So, we're no longer talking really about the youth who are here now. We're talking about people who are adults now. The youth who are here now, even if DACA were to continue, wouldn't be eligible for it. The other big issue is, though, that DACA was never meant to be a permanent program. It was a Band-Aid solution until we got the DREAM Act passed, which we came close to at one point. And
because of the then bipartisan support.
Right.
Yes.
And we thought, or at least the Obama administration thought, well, let's put this Band-Aid on it for a couple of years till Congress actually acts.
Yeah, right.
But Congress never acted.
Okay. All right. So you get the comprehensive immigration plan and your assessment on how far we are away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, very loaded question, right?
That's why I'm asking you.
Right. Right. And I mean, it's even, I'm thinking of our clients, right, from Martha's Vineyard, they didn't even realize, right, the politicized nature of what happened to them, right? And again, like they were just traveling here trying to find safety. And that, now that they're here and they've heard the news and everything, it's not lost on them that is the case, that the immigration debate in the U.S. is such a polarizing topic. But I think what's important is that people don't forget that these are people's lives, right? Like, people are fleeing violence, people are fleeing natural disasters as climate change affects our planet in so many different ways, and a lot of times affecting communities of color, right? I mean, a lot of migrants are leaving regions like Central America and South America because of natural disasters, and there is no current legal protection for refugees who are affected by climate change, right, or climate disasters, and that's something that has to be addressed, right? Obviously, the situations are changing, and so should our policies.
All right, so what do you think the impact is on I was saying the midterm. Sarang took it bigger than that, but what do you say?
In regards to the Martha's Vineyard situation?
And the refocus on immigration.
You know, that was definitely a political stunt, right? And again, I think at the end of the day, that the bottom line is that human beings can't be used in that way. And yes, this is a polarizing topic, but like, organizations such as Lawyers for Civil Rights will have to, hold those people accountable and those parties accountable to make sure it doesn't occur again. And then,
All right, so one last question, and that's about the driver's license ballot question, which is clearly based on an anti-immigrant sentiment. Just background for people who haven't caught up with it. After years and years of debate in the legislature passed a bill that would allow undocumented folks to receive driver's licenses that do not allow them to vote. It's a way of identification and to get insurance so that you don't have people on the road who have not, learned how to drive a car and blah, blah, blah. And then a group formed saying, we don't like the fact that this passed, and we are putting a bill, a ballot question on for the people to vote for to knock that driver's license, what is now law, down. What's your sense? Pass? Will they be successful? And has what has happened on Martha's Vineyard stirred support for it in ways that maybe wouldn't have happened before or not? I'll start with you, Sarang.
I'm going to bring in polls again. What we've seen from polls have been pretty split so far, so it's really hard to have any good idea of where this is going to go. I think the bigger issue, the really big issue around this question is how much people are actually aware of it. I mean, this came out so late it didn't even make the voter guide. And a lot of people we talk to aren't even aware that this question's on the ballot. And I do think that Martha's Vineyard has heightened attention to this. And I do think, the more we're able to get out there and actually tell people what this bill does, the more people support it. The fact that the opposition, the folks who got this on the ballot to begin with, that the only thing they have, frankly, are lies. You mentioned the voting. We have thousands of people in this state who have driver's licenses who aren't eligible to vote, whether you're talking about green card holders, students, anyone who's under the age of 18 who still has a driver's license. It tells you that they really have there's no good policy reason not to do this for the state.
Okay. What's your sense?
I am not sure if the Martha's Vineyard situation has impact on the ballot question. I do know the opposition did get far more signatures than was required to get that on the ballot and by the deadline. However, they are painting a very interesting false narrative about not just about voting, but also about the RMV being able to handle the documentation. The documentation the immigrants would have to present would probably be false or fake. And it's like, no, it's pretty explicitly written in the law that you have to present several documents that are current, like passports, consular documents, and those are vetted beforehand. So are they attacking the vetting process? And when I asked that, they couldn't answer. So it's intriguing.
Okay. Mirian, last word.
Right. I think that, again, the bottom line in regards to this policy or ballot question is that there's so much misinformation about it. And to me, it's so interesting because there's so many jurisdictions across the country that have successfully done this, and it's been, it creates safer roads. There's so many benefits to it, right? And it's terrible to see that misinformation is kind of like pushing people away from that and creating more hate around that topic.
Could I add one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
So some colleagues at the GBH Center of Investigative Reporting looked into Connecticut a few years ago, a state that had something quite similar pass, I believe in 2015 or 2014, and they saw a significant, like double digits, fall in traffic accidents where people would leave the scene. They saw thousands
it passed.
Because it passed.
Yes, okay.
And they also found that more people were actually going through the driver's test. The whole point, advocates say, is for the roads to be safer, for people to be safer. And if you're looking for a case example, Connecticut seems to be that.
Okay. Well, rich discussion. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.